Hi, so let us continue what we have started. So that was the first session, and this would be the second one. We have to divide it into different segments for recording purposes, because it's hard to record or to upload if we will do it in longer minutes or several minutes or more than an hour. So we have to divide it into segments. So in the first session, the last lesson I was discussing with you was history, the early methods of detecting deception. So when we see early, probably when human beings begin to exist, each generation has their own method of detecting deception. But as we civilize, we tend to change the way we approach things, like what I've said in my first session. Maybe what we thought right now as advanced technology in detecting deceptions, we use computer, but probably 100 or 200 years later, they will consider what we have right now as ridiculous or ludicrous, or maybe they would also call it inhuman, or I don't know what they are going to call what we thought to be high-tech today. So what they have done 1,000 years ago in detecting lies, we have no right to judge them, because during their time, that is the most appropriate, and it may be barbaric for us, but that's their practice. But what I have already mentioned, that is how detecting lies evolved. So we are still going to talk about history. So we learned that there are several, actually hundreds of methods of detecting deceptions, depending on what place is that. Like for example, in West Africa, what we do here, I think, is similar to what they also do there. When we have an occasion in our country, we use eggs. So in West Africa, what they do is to pass birds' egg to one another. If a person broke the egg, then he or she would be considered guilty. So it's really very stupid to imagine that here comes 5 suspects, you give them eggs of a bird, and then let them pass the egg one from the other, and then I don't know if they would tell them to move as fast as they can, and if whoever broke that, then that person would be considered guilty. And also in China, it's like the rice chewing ordeal, where the suspect will be given a handful of rice in his mouth, because they believe that salivation will cease at times of emotional anxiety. So meaning, when you are anxious or worried because you are lying, the belief of the Chinese people is you will stop from producing saliva. So if you are the suspect, and with a handful of rice in your mouth, after some time they will require you to bring it out, and if the rice is still dry, it means that you are guilty. So if you are going to look at it, there is also a scientific basis, although it's not so much scientifically accepted, but there seems to be a scientific basis also here. So those are just examples from other countries, and let us go further about history. However, in the onset of the 20th century, so there are already attempts by people through science. Of course, the earlier method of detecting deceptions, they are also connected to science, but in the 19th century, there are already scientists when our technology are more advanced. There are already inventors, scientists, philosophers who are doing their best in order to come out with a much improved and better tools to determine if somebody is lying or not. And one of them is our father of criminology, Cesare Lombroso, who invented a machine called HYDROSPHYMOGRAPH. From the word hydro, so meaning he is using here water. It's complicated to explain, but he called it HYDROSPHYMOGRAPH because he has to soak one of the instruments in detecting lies. But what I wanted to emphasize here is his polygraph machine measured only changes in pulse and blood pressure. So as you can see, it measures only one of the physiological activities of the body, and that's it. You see pulse rate only, and then blood pressure, and you know that pulse is also connected to blood pressure, so it is monotonous. It records only one of the activities. But take note, that was in 1895, but he already believes or uses that in investigating a case. So that was Cesare Lombroso. And then there was also another guy whose name is Benussi. What he did was to detect reception with pneumograph. So in other words, he also uses the breathing of the subject. The way he did it was he invented a gadget or machine which is capable of graphically measuring examinee's inhalation and exhalation. So we don't know how he do this one, but what he measured only is the inhalation and exhalation. Graphically measures, or graphically measures, it's by number or by height and by number. So it's actually where the origin of breathing rate and the breathing amplitude. So it is him who introduced that idea. So yeah, as you can see here, it uses the changes in breathing patterns accompanying deception. So graph, that's why today in the analog polygraph, it uses also graphing like paper, which is polygraph chart, and that was the idea of Vittorio Benussi. And mind you, and take note, only one also, like Lombroso, which measures the blood pressure on and pulse rate. Benussi also introduced one kind of one gadget that records only one activity also of the body. That was 1914, and then as years passed by, in 1920 there is an improvement. A device recording both blood pressure and galvanic skin response was invented in 1920 by John LARSON. So you take note here. So Lombroso introduced blood pressure, and then here comes another one, galvanic skin response. So he added another activity. So there are already two activities of the body that will be recorded by the machine invented in 1920, and that is skin response, so referring to detecting the activity of our sweat glands. That was LARSON, and known to be the first kind of instrument used in law enforcement. So LARSON's polygraph, but as I've said, it was measuring only blood pressure and skin resistance, but at least it's the first time that polygraph was used in law enforcement. And back to Lombroso, the machine that he invented is HYDROSPHYMOGRAPH, which measure, or now called as CARDIOSPHYMOGRAPH. It became only one component of the polygraph in modern day times, while during his time the machine he invented is HYDROSPHYMOGRAPH, and that is already considered as polygraph in his time. But today it is already just one component of the modern polygraph. Cesare Lombroso accorded as the first person that utilized this instrument in detect. Yeah, during his time, remember, he exists in 1895, and he uses that already in detecting deception, although not as a law enforcer. But he already attempted to use that in detecting deception, because the polygraph machine was used only in law enforcement in 1920, and the recording only the blood pressure and skin resistance. So take note of that, and then progress. And then we have also another popular inventor, Angelo Mosso. He stated that fear influenced the heart and could be used as basis for detecting deception. He uses sphygmanometer and scientific radio to study fear. His greatest contribution is to determine the effect of fear in the heart, and so he found out that there is a very strong correlation between fear and the activity of the heart. So if a person is afraid, there is a strong effect to the heart, and eventually that effect in the heart will also affect the whole body. So he found that by using his own gadget. So it was him who studied fear, which also eventually the basis of many inventors of polygraph to conclude that it is possible to detect lies, because it is scientifically proven that when somebody is afraid, it changes the heart and also the activity of the heart. So when a subject is lying and he doesn't want to be detected, so fear creeps in, and so that is what polygraph will record. So that is Angelo Mosso. And then another important person in history is Dr. William Marston. So what did he do? He conducted numerous tests for detecting deception and utilizes change in systolic pressure to determine deception. He also developed his own method of reading systolic blood pressure, and he's the self-proclaimed father of polygraph. So you know, when the heart is activated, you know, it pumps blood. So we have what we call as systolic and diastolic. So when, for example, the tracing of the cardiosphygmograph is like this, right? So the going up like this is what we call as systolic, and the going down is diastolic. And so Dr. William Marston uses that. He utilizes the changes in systolic pressure to determine deceptions. So there are instances where this systolic pressure, meaning, will go higher, or sometimes it go down to its base, and that's what Marston introduced, and that is also what we are using right now in our polygraph tests. So it was his idea. Okay, and then another one is John LARSON. The present polygraph machine is attributed to him, so we already talked about it. But what is also important about LARSON is he called us the real father of lie detection, though there are so many who proclaim themselves, self-proclaim. The present polygraph machine is attributed to him. He is then who developed in a study to record continuously and simultaneously response to blood pressure, pulse rate, and respiration. So simultaneously and continuously. The polygraph many years ago measures only one or two activities of the body. Like I mentioned a while ago that some of the polygraph detects only blood pressure and pulse rate, and another one is blood pressure and skin resistance. So it did not detect the breathing rate, or if not, there is only a machine that detect breathing rate but not blood pressure. So it's like the polygraph before are separated. So what did LARSON do is to put them together. He combined all of these gadgets, put them into one, and so what happened is there is already continuous and simultaneous response of the blood pressure rate, pulse rate, and respiration. So meaning at the same time, this blood pressure, pulse rate, and respiration are being recorded. Before, you measure blood pressure first, and then another machine will record the respiration. So LARSON combined them once and for all. And so we know that galvanograph is also one component, and who invented and introduced them. Galvanograph is one of the components that records the skin resistance. So who introduced that? First is Sticker. He introduced the method of detecting deception from the galvanic impression on the chart tracing. So he was the one who suggested how we can read and understand the tracing. Tracing of galvanograph is simply like that, and he introduced a way how to measure that, like for example measuring how far is that from there. And then Biragot, he used the word psychogalvanic reflex. He believed that the electrical phenomena are due to the activity of sweat glands, and such activity is known as psycho. So electrical phenomena are due to the activity. So why there is an electrical phenomena in our body is because of the sweat glands. So Biragot studied how our sweat glands work, and sweat glands is part of our skin that produces sweat, and that is also what is being recorded by the galvanograph component. Biragot discovered that. So the activity in our skin is caused by the sweat glands introduced to us by Biragot. The Sticker introduced how we are going to read it, but further studied by Biragot. Two of them combine the ideas. Now we have what we call as galvanograph component. Another one, Leonard Keeler, he devised a metal recording bellows, rolled chart paper. So he devised two metal recording bellows, the one that will be connected to the chest, so it's really like bellows. Or he also developed the rolled paper chart. So if you still remember, when we say paper chart, it is where the tracing will be recorded. And then the metal bellows, the one that will, as I've said, the one that will be attached to the chest and the abdomen. It is like an accordion type that can be expanded. So that was introduced by Keeler. And also he incorporated galvanograph with measurement of blood pressure, respiration, and to a portable case. So remember the invention of LARSON. John LARSON, who is known as the father of lie detection, he had a polygraph machine that is continuously and simultaneously record the blood pressure, respiration, and then the breathing. However, Leonard Keeler improved that. He made it into a portable case, meaning he combined also all of them, yet he added also galvanograph. He added galvanograph because the LARSON doesn't have galvanograph, and so he made it portable, so meaning it can be carried by single person. Unlike the polygraph machine, before it's so heavy and usually it is just sitting down in the crime laboratory and cannot be carried anywhere. So Leonard Keeler improved it and made it portable. Okay, so those are the important people who have contributed in the development of polygraphy or invention of polygraph machine. Although there are many, if you read history, there are other hundreds or even thousands more who would claim that they also contributed in part or in whole in the improvement of polygraph machine, but so far through history they are the most popular ones. However, the point there is what we have today is not just there. It is a product of thousands and hundreds of people and hundreds or probably thousands of years in the making, and it's still being made, so it's still progressing. And I think this topic in your screens are not already new to you. We're doing this one to help us remember and recall what we have learned. So as we know, there are 4 major components in the polygraph machine, although today they are increasing the numbers. So the high-tech computer polygraph now have more than 4 components, but the old polygraph has 4. First, the pneumograph, which are composed of the pneumograph 1 and 2, that generally records the breathing rate, particularly records the thoracic breathing and the abdomen breathing. So we have the CARDIOSPHYMOGRAPH, generally records also 2, the pulse rate and then the blood pressure. So we have the galvanograph component, which records the skin resistance or the sweat gland activities. So I'm not going to talk about this because we have another video for this, introducing the components of the polygraph machine, as well as where or which part of the body this component will be attached. So just watch that separately, and hopefully you will understand better what are these 4 major components. And in the analog polygraph, when you see analog, these are the polygraph that is very old. There is also a component called KEYMOGRAPH. In this KEYMOGRAPH is part of the machine where you can find the adjustments, and then also you will find the machine that runs the machine, or the machine that pulls or runs the paper chart. So that's it. Yeah, today polygraph examiners use 2 types of instrument. So we have the analog. For other places they still use analog, the old type, but I think not so much now. what we use, even Philippines, who is considered as third world country, is already using computerized polygraph. So the only difference here is that the analog, you have to interpret the tracings in the paper chart. You have to wait for the tracing cost or tracing that is produced through the ink coming from the polygraph pen. While in computerized polygraph, you can already directly watch in your screen the tracing, but in order to interpret it very well, what you do is you have to print those tracings and further study. And then other apps already are being developed, and some are already developed, which read the tracings, and then the computer will just recommend as to what was the findings. If the findings show that the subject is deceptive or not. However, what is still being practiced is that the examiner will be the one to interpret the tracing. Although apps are already being developed through the use of the artificial intelligence, I think there will be a lot of breakthroughs in the use of polygraph machine, and I think there is a possibility that it would be easier to detect if someone is lying or not with the use of the neural link or the artificial intelligence, which I'm so excited. I hope I could see that in my lifetime, that the artificial intelligence will tell you directly if somebody is lying or not. So I think our problems in the court would soon be solved, hopefully. Well, so this is an example of the analog for those who have not seen it yet, but if you were my student before, probably you can remember that. And this is an example of the computerized polygraph machine, which I have also a video on what are the different parts and function of its component. So let's go further, talking about what is it. So the polygraph instrument has undergone a dramatic change in the last decade. Yeah, that's right. So it's just 100 years since Lombroso was just using blood pressure, using HYDROSPHYMOGRAPH, and then here comes now the computerized polygraph. So for many years, polygraphs were those instruments that you see in the movies with little needles scribble lines in a single strip of scrolling paper. These are called analog polygraphs. Today, most polygraph tests are administered with digital equipment. The scrolling paper has been replaced with sophisticated algorithms and computer monitors. So yeah, that's it. So it is improving. It's like much easier for now. Okay, but the truth remains that it is not still directly telling us that we are lying or not. So that's still what we are trying to solve. So modern scientific methods have been devised utilizing knowledge of physiology, psychology, pharmacology, toxicology, etc. in determining whether a subject is telling the truth or not. Although a scientific method of detection have not yet attained legal recognition to have their results admissible as an evidence in court, they have been considered very useful as aids in investigation. So you have to take note of that, although it's generally true even other countries, including our country, Philippines, do not accept the result of polygraph test as evidence in court, but it's used for us. It serves as an aid in conducting investigation. It helps a lot in the investigation of case. So that is why we are still studying it, even though it is not admissible as evidence, because it's really helpful. It aids, it helps, in other words, in investigating. Okay, so here are other discussions. So methods of deception detection. So what else do we use in detecting deceptions? So perhaps I would like to end again another session here, and because this topic will take us a little bit longer to discuss, just one slide. So I would like to end here another session. It's already 30 minutes, so see you on the other session, session 3. So bye for now.